Thanks for joining us on Paths to Restoration. I'm Ed Czyzewski, and I am joined by author Catherine McNiel. She's an author and speaker, and her books are Long Days of Small Things and All Shall Be Well. Thanks for joining me today, Catherine.
Thanks for having me, Ed.
So I always like to start out with just, talk a little bit about your books, about your work these days, and, even what you're working on like right now.
Absolutely. I'd love to. I have two books currently out. Long Days of Small Things is my first. It's the subtitle is Motherhood as a Spiritual Discipline. And I wrote that when my children were in preschool, and I kept hearing the message that I have three children. So I kept hearing the message that, well, in order to really pursue a spiritual life, you have to find that 30 to 60 minutes of time alone with God. And I tried. I really did. Spiritual formation is important to me. I was well trained in the rudiments of discipleship and the spiritual practices. But even at 3 o'clock in the morning, I wasn't alone. Even in the bathroom, I wasn't alone at any time of the day or night. And I just felt confident that God was not counting me out, that God had invented this season of life. He had invented reproduction and the need that small children have on their parents, and that it wasn't that I was feeling so entitled to my own time that I couldn't make time for God. It's that I had already poured out all of my time to God and to service and to nurturing, all of which are spiritual disciplines in and of themselves. And so I wrote to encourage other parents, specifically moms, but plenty of dads and even caregivers have reached out to me to say that it was meaningful for them also to see God's redemptive work sustaining them right in the tasks that they're already doing, when there simply isn't more margin to carve out.
Right.
My second book is called All Shall Be Well, Awakening to God's Presence in His Messy, Abundant World. And I look at the cycles of creation, the rhythms that are already embedded in the world that God made. And I think God created intentionally and joyfully. And I find that every single day, every single year, we go through cycles of new life, vibrancy and fullness, decline and death, and then a pause for dormancy, and then beginning again. And I ask myself, what is it that God is teaching us in these cycles that God created? And how can we find God in those cycles, which we so often love to ignore? We like to just kind of stay at full vibrancy all the time, maybe dabbling into new life every now and then, but we don't prefer decline and dormancy as much. So,
Right.
yeah.
Great. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny. I was thinking about this morning, even I was trying to go through my prayer book, and one of my kids got up early. And so he's like giving me he's just totally in the weeds about some video game that they they play as like a break during school.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking of a Henry Nouwen quote that my ministry is the interruption.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's that sense of oh, this is an interruption from, the spiritual task, but there are these other moments around us that we can embrace the interruptions too, and there's a lot more interruptions right now.
Absolutely. Yes, the ministry of interruptions. And we think of faith as something that happens in our head or maybe in our heart, but I write about how Jesus was hanging out with fishermen and talking about yeast, making bread, and talking about sheep, and he placed the gospel in all the tangible, tactile things of everyday life. And I think if he were here teaching us today in the flesh, that he would be doing the same.
It is interesting to think about even the idea of interruptions, is that so much of his ministry happened because he was interrupted.
Absolutely. Yeah. Constantly. And he also snuck away to lonely places to pray. And I love that. I'm very much an introvert. I want every little lonely place I can find. But I'm convinced, I think that's why it matters to me so much, is because I need it so badly that God has taught me how to find him even when that's not available to me, which is very much the case during this pandemic.
Right. Yeah.
The kids and I, my school-age children, are together every single minute of the day and night.
Right, right. Yeah. And then your second book, I'm curious, like how did that come about? Because, that, yes, the seasons, the cycles, was there a particular experience that you're like, oh, like I'm feeling this, I need to write about it, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think looking back on a blog that I wrote 15 years ago,
Oh my word.
yeah, time flies. um, and journals and things that I've written throughout the years, I think I've always been really enamored by creation and the cycles. And we talk about spiritual rhythms as we
Mhm.
do spiritual practices. We talk about seasons, spiritual rhythms. And I just think that there's this whole panorama of spiritual practice happening in the sky and in the ground and the soil that we can tap into. I think I've just always been enamored by that, always
Mm.
seeking for that. But I am an avid gardener.
All right.
Yes, we have an enormous garden. We've actually taken over most of our yard and then rented several plots at a community garden as well. And so I get up and close and personal with the thrill of something new peeking through the ground when it's still the season of death. And
Mm.
I get up and close and personal with how very busy the thriving season is and how delicious, how the duties and the delights go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And also how sad, how much of a loss there is when that season, which was so short, ends. But how the new life doesn't come without that period, without that pause. And that's, even our own breathing cycle is a microcosm of that. We breathe in, we breathe out, and then we have to pause. We can't just always be inhaling. We can't
Mm.
always be exhaling. We have to follow the whole cycle. And even sleeping, as much as we love it to be 2 o'clock in the afternoon all the time, um, we need sleep.
Mm.
We have to power down. And it's in the powering down, it's in the letting go, it's in the accepting the loss, the dormancy, that we find new life again the next morning.
Mm. Right.
So, yeah.
That's a helpful, I mean, just part of the goal of this podcast is to talk about spiritual practices and how they kind of help deliver us from the digital
Mm-hmm.
technology aspect of our world that we're all kind of immersed in.
Mm-hmm.
But what a helpful kind of counterweight to the immediacy, right, of
Mm-hmm.
social media. That it's always that instant affirmation, the instant reply,
Yeah.
and all that. And then gardening, it's like we're gonna put garlic in our garden pretty
Yeah.
soon, and
Yeah.
you're not gonna harvest that until like June or July, right?
Right. At the earliest. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a waiting period. In both of those books that I mentioned, I
Mhm.
end every chapter with practices where I try to bring these ideas into something that you can try today. And in All Shall Be Well, I start almost every chapter's practices with just take a look around yourself. Where are you today? What's going on today? Because we do
Mhm.
tend to live in this digital space where, whether it's winter or summer, whether it's day or night, we can keep on going. And I think we do lose that kind of ebb and flow of the waves crashing on the shore. We need the full cycle, and it it at this stage of the game we have to actually remind ourselves to pay attention. Where am I right now? What's going on right now? Is it time to take a breath? Is it time to get up and run?
Mhm. Mm. Um, you know, being an author, we
Mhm.
all know that there's this kind of expectation that authors are on social media. So, I'm curious, like how have you found social media intersecting with your work as an author? Um, how has it proven beneficial? How have you felt like you needed to put some barriers around it?
Such good questions. I actually enjoy social media a good bit. I know a lot of people feel anxious or fall into like a comparison game. For me, I'm an author because I love ideas and I love people, and I can find both of those readily available, a buffet of people and ideas on social media. So, uh, for me, I do enjoy it, and like you said, as an author, I am very much expected to be enjoying it. Um, it is useful to connect with writers and editors. It's life giving. I don't know that I would know you, Ed, without social media.
Oh, no, you
Um,
wouldn't. Yeah.
it is useful to be able to create a virtual community of like-minded people that I might not be able to just find in my town. Um, I love being able to communicate with readers. Every now and then I'll get a message from a reader on social media who is able to find me and share how something that I've written really impacted them. And that is one of the main gifts of my life. But social media is definitely a pull that does not come with its own barriers, like
Right, right.
as we've all learned from watching The Social Dilemma on Netflix, which I'm not endorsing, but it is not set up for moderation. It's set up to take over your brain, and I heartily concur that that's true. I do try to set barriers. Um, I try to. I often don't have social media on my phone, actually. I don't want to be standing in line at the grocery store and scrolling. I want to be standing in line at the grocery store. So much of the writing that I do is reminding myself and hopefully the reader to be present in the moment that I'm in. And having social media on my phone is not helpful at all for that. So
Mm,
I
mm.
think that's the main way I try to curb the appeal, is by limiting my access to it.
Right, right. Do you feel like your use has like evolved over the years, either through um, seeing unhealthy patterns that you need to stop, or just you've evolved because of situations changing, such as, I don't know,
Yeah.
like a global pandemic?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways I think that my use has evolved. On just a very practical level, I can remember when email was invented, and
Yeah.
like email was something that you checked every now and then,
Right.
kind of for fun. And now it's a part of my daily responsibilities. I can't stay employed if I don't stay on top of my email. And social media has become that for me as an author. I need to be connecting with people there. I'm receiving work from there. I'm receiving opportunities there. I'm putting out content there. It's become a workplace, a marketplace for me. So in that sense, I definitely use it more. Um, in another sense, I would say I do use it less, because I have definitely felt how it has become almost like a virtual reality that you can get sucked into and forget to live in the actual reality. I want to know the people who are my neighbors. I want to talk to the people standing in line with me in the grocery store, not just the people that I'm connected to on Instagram. So I do, like I said, I try to put up barriers, try to create rhythms where I'm um, spending some of that quiet alone time with God before I'm spending it with um, my followers and friends. The pandemic has been hard. I actually felt that I had gotten into a really good rhythm of
Mm,
using social media and not having social media use me. Back in December and January, I actually said out loud, like, I finally feel content with the rhythms that I've created, and I feel like they're embedded enough in my own personal rhythms that I can rely on them, and it's not constant. I don't have to constantly be assessing, like, am I on too much? Am I on too little?
mm.
Um, and then the pandemic hit, and everything moved digital, and that has definitely been an X factor. It's hard. I'm a little disoriented, I think, about what those rhythms could or should be right now. But
Right.
yeah, I continue to try to remain sitting in this actual chair in this actual room with the people who are actually in my earshot and not exclusively seeing myself as having a conversation in the digital space, as
Right.
much as I also enjoy that conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Do you feel like almost seeing social media as a kind of a professional tools has helped you create those boundaries a little bit more as far as just, you pursue relationships around you, and then there's kind of the professional work water cooler aspect of social media. Has that helped you?
Yeah, I think that does help. And even more, I think seeing it as a ministry tool.
Hmm.
I lean Enneagram 5, and so I could be easily sucked into endless debate about arcane thoughts. uh, but because the writing that I do is on spiritual formation and discipleship, I do try to remind myself. I think the posture that I try to have, please, listeners, do not go looking up all my places of failure. But the posture that I try to have on social
Right.
media is one of service. I post something if I think it will be of benefit to my readers or to my friends. I share something not because most of the time I'm feeling impulsive, but because I I want to share something that I think could, I hope, I pray could be of service. That doesn't mean that it's always. Sometimes I think we can serve each other through confrontation. Sometimes I think we need to serve each other by quieting. Um, but I think trying to remind myself of that posture of
Yeah.
social media space as a place to help each other, to serve each other, to be a ministry space is, I think, the most helpful frame for me.
Yeah, that's really helpful. To amp up the questions a little bit, we're recording this literally like a week away from election day. How are
Indeed.
you, yeah, how are you serving people who are anxious or angry, or, how, when you're using social media, um, what's been your approach, your mindset going into it, especially with this kind of backdrop?
Oh, these are hard times.
Yeah.
I think we're rarely going to change anyone's mind on social media by arguing with them. I personally have had my mind changed by reading thoughtful things that people I trust have said and doing and practicing deep listening. But that is very different from arguing. I do try to post things that maybe look at things from a different perspective than what I'm primarily hearing, and sharing how it impacts me personally at times. I have on Facebook every Wednesday, I open up my page for people to post on all caps in case they need to shout.
That's great.
Yeah. And people do avail themselves of this. I get a lot of shouting, and I the rules that I give are that you can't shout at someone. Like, we're letting it out. We're not attacking. Whether it's something joyful that you're very excited about, or something devastating that you just need to get off your shoulders. I let people shout there, just not at anybody. On Instagram, occasionally I'll ask people to request music and I'll play a clip of a song. So there's a lot of different ways we can try to stay sane, try to find coping mechanisms, but these are hard times.
Just to clarify, are you singing the song on Instagram?
No, no. I did that once, but that was a one-time event.
I'm like,
No,
I'm gonna get Instagram back on my phone. I'm gonna dig through
no,
your. Yeah.
no. And plus, that was in my stories, so it's gone now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's really funny.
um,
Yeah,
and just,
my
oh,
profile on social media. Sorry.
go ahead.
My profile on social media says that I'm on the lookout for beauty, wisdom, and iced coffee. So to whatever degree I can live into that, beauty and wisdom, I don't think are at cross purposes with each other.
Mm,
Iced coffee always helps. So,
right, right. Even in winter, huh? Iced
well,
coffee?
I have hot coffee today.
Okay, I was gonna say, yeah. Yeah, we're in Kentucky now. I'm from Philadelphia, and I got thrown off by the fact that when you get coffee here, like at like a Dunkin' Donuts or whatever, you have to specify if you want it hot or iced. Like it's so
Wow.
yeah. So anyway, this might be your kind of place.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe I'll have to come visit.
right? No, you don't want to visit us. We're a hot zone right now.
Coffee tourism.
We're we're like
Well,
dark red.
you don't want me to come. We're the same.
Oh, you're the same. Okay.
Yeah.
And just by way of starting to kind of wind things down here, what kinds of practices have helped you find restoration, have grounded you, whether that's, right now during the pandemic, or, or if you want to list like your most helpful spiritual practice or whatever,
Mm.
like, what's been really life-giving for you, that if someone's like, I want to make more space for spiritual practices in my life, what would be kind of your go-to?
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. I do need that quiet, like I said. All of my books are about finding God during the chaos, but I do thrive on some silence. So whether that is literally just paying attention to the breath that I'm taking for that 3 seconds and kind of recentering myself, or if it's going on a walk by myself and just really paying attention, not having a podcast on while I'm walking, or, except for this one, um, not making a phone call while I'm walking or driving somewhere, but just being silent for a bit. I'd love to take a silent weekend retreat, but that's not possible right now. So I do look for those places where I can find silence in my daily life and remember that God is there, that God is already right here. We don't need to beg God to come and meet us. We don't need to clean ourselves up. We just need to remind ourselves that God is already right here. And I always have breath, at least, to remind me of that, even when I don't have more. I've actually been, during the pandemic, remembering the app, since we're talking about smartphones.
Yeah.
Pray as you go.
Yeah, yeah.
It does a little Lectio Divina on a passage of scripture with some quiet, calming music and some probing, reflective questions. And I do try, my children are e-learning, and there is this little tiny sliver of time after I get my middle schoolers into school, before I get my daughter into school, where I try to sit and listen to today's Pray As You Go offering. And I found that to be helpful during this season of being on the go.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's, a great reminder that I feel like, smartphones are they are like kind of like little distraction machines, but
Mhm.
at the same time, I started the examine practice because I found an app that I could
Yeah,
use on my phone. And I was so addicted to my phone that I was like, oh, this is great. I can use my phone more. Um,
right.
you know, but that can also, kind of, I mean, for me, it was kind of like training wheels. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
It's a process.
I do love the prayer of examine, as you're mentioning it. That was actually created for people on the go, people who, as I'm sure you know, a Jesuit tool to stay connected to God no matter what is happening in your life. Um, it invites you to look around yourself, like I mentioned earlier, and see where you are, what's going on right now, both outside and inside. And then invite God into that space. Reflect on where you are joyful, where things are broken, like on my Wednesday shouting post.
Right.
um, and then give those things over to God, and then look forward into where you're going. And it really is just a thought exercise. Again, I feel like so often the spiritual disciplines are just remembering that whether I'm doing the dishes or raking leaves or shoveling snow, God is here, and it is in God that I live and move and have my being. And I can do whatever it is that I'm doing to God's glory and find spiritual nourishment in that if I'm doing it unto and empowered by the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great point to wrap up on. Could you just tell readers, or not readers, sorry, author brain speaking here. I'm an author first. I'm a podcast host, like 20th. Where can folks connect with you? Where can they find you and your books, or not hire you, contact you about coming to speak?
Probably the best place to begin is my website, CatherineMcNiel.com. Both of those names are often misspelled, but it's CatherineMcNiel.com. And from there, you can find links to my books, to my social media sites. You can hire me as a speaker or even as a writer or editor. So I would love to hear from any readers or listeners through my website or anywhere else you can find me. My books are available wherever books are sold.
Yeah, and great reviews, great feedback on your books. I think they really helped a lot of people. So that's really awesome.
I pray that is true.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ed. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks. I'll see you on Twitter.
Sounds good.